Hi, everyone. This is Steph with a little bit of Steph. Thank you so much for following my journey to see what God is doing within me as well as within my life. I don't know about you, but I sure look forward to what's to come. Disclaimer. Warning. This section may be troubling or triggering to you, so go slow and stop as needed. Disclaimer. I am not a therapist or counselor. I am only sharing my story of my life from my perspective, as well as what has helped me to heal and is still helping me. Free 24-hour support is available through the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline by calling 1-800-273-8255 or by texting HOME to 741-741. Hi, everybody. This is Steph with a little bit of Steph, episode 15, Courageous Proportions. This episode is in regards to domestic violence. If you or someone you know is being abused, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. If you are an abuser and you're ready to reach out and get the help that you need to change, then please call the same number because there's support there for you too. I want to dedicate this episode to a very dear friend of mine who went through a very long marriage, gave much of her life to a spouse that she loved dearly and did not get the same in return. She did whatever it took to get herself and her children out of a very dangerous situation. And so I dedicate this to her, as well as to anyone else who is trying to find the strength to get out of a situation like that. I am going to start this off with a poem called Standing Tall. Breathing, looking, feeling, and walking. Deciding, choosing, living, and talking. Just like a developing child, an adolescent learning. Just like an endless beginning, a genuine yearning. Independent, supported, or alone. Beg, borrow, or maybe one day I'll even own. There is definitely a light, and it is calling me. Close my eyes, spread my wings, and I will fly free. No more shame, pretend, cheap smiles, and lies. No more ifs, buts, maybes, and whys. Who are you? What do you want? How do you sleep? I know now that I am not your possession to abuse and keep. You are right. It's dramatic and all for show. But it was you in the lead role, so desperate to grow. Like a parasite, you tried to consume and destroy my life. Like a human being, I tried to be your partner, friend, and wife. Go back to where you came from. It is what you do best. Go back to being nothing, an annoying little pest. And when you get there, be sure to look up high. Can you see me beaming brightly, lighting up the sky? Each night I am reminded that you are evil, selfish, and vile. Each night I am reminded how lucky I am, blessed, and smile. You should see them now you've gone, happy, confident, and born again. All their own work, they've erased you and survived any pain. It was much easier than I thought. You cannot miss what was never there. But unlike you, I did feel true love. I wanted to grow, experience, and share. What a waste, a pointless thought, and an unwanted gift. All you saw was credibility, an excuse, and blame to shift. It is getting closer, that beautiful light calling me. Close my eyes, spread my wings, and I am flying free. It's over, just give up, and please let us be. never again imprisoned. Now and forever, I'm holding the key. Your self-pity and fairy tales fall on deaf ears. Your stories and lies create no sympathy tears. One by one, everyone is hearing the truth. Capital T, capital R, capital U, capital T, capital H comes with real evidence and proof. I swear this is the final night you will give me no sleep. There's no master plan or cunning revenge for me to reap. You are a lonely little man, idiot, bully, gambling fool. You've lost again, tough guy, but I've got it all. Do you feel small, pathetic and cruel? Down, down you fall. At last I am standing tall. We've got it all. Okay. So now that poem right there just really resonates with me. It resonates with me because of my friend and her story and how she saved herself and her children. Because had she not escaped that situation, there's no telling what may have happened to them. I also feel a closeness to this poem. Although I do not have children, I have been in an abusive marriage before, and there were children involved. And so I want to share my personal story, just the little bits and pieces of the timeline of it, to kind of help people understand and kind of see where it started and where it fell, the in-betweens, and the things that I was able to find out afterwards. If you just pay attention throughout the storyline, you'll see at the end how certain things are starting to click together, and how my abuser used his manipulative, narcissistic ways to control my life completely, and how I fell for it more than once. So here we go. I'm gonna use my computer here so that I don't forget little bits and pieces. And okay, so our first date. Our first date was really, really cute. We met online, and he brought his children. He took me to a Mexican restaurant. I love Mexican food, so that was cool. He brought his two youngest children with him on our date to woo me. That's not necessarily a red flag, because a lot of people do stuff like that. I mean, everyone's a little different, a little bit nicer, a little bit more friendly, a little bit more dressed up, in the beginning of a relationship. That can also happen because sometimes, you've got one end where some people want to protect their children and they don't want you to meet their children until you've proven yourself to a certain point. And then there's other people that just want to say right out the gate, not that they're not protecting their children, because they are in a different way, and they're saying, these are mine. This is a group thing, this is a package deal. So these are my children, and you either like them or you don't get me. You accept them or you don't get me. So it doesn't, mean either way, but just notating. He brought his children along. Okay, so not long into our dating, I started meeting family, his family, of course. It was interesting, actually. One incident in particular I will share about. So the time that I was going to meet his father and stepmother. So we go over to their house. I can't remember if it was for a meal. I'm not exactly sure all the little details. It was so long ago. But he had warned me in advance before going over there that he has a sister-in-law, in his opinion, that he thinks is crazy, and tells me not to listen to anything that she says because of how awful she is. So I'm automatically thinking in my mind, okay, my sweet boyfriend's just trying to look out for me. So, I'll just be careful. We get there. I've never used the restroom. I've never been to his dad's home before, his father's home and stepmother's home. So it's time for me to use the restroom, and he's busy. So his sister-in-law, the same one he was referring to about me being leery of, had offered to help me walk to the restroom, help me find it. We get back there and she shoves her way in the bathroom with me, and she's like, I just have to tell you something. And I'm just, oh my goodness, okay. And so she then proceeds to warn me about the current boyfriend at the time, who ended up being my husband later, and how crazy he is and how abusive he is, and that he's a drug abuser, an alcohol abuser, all these different things. And I'm like, oh, wow, he hasn't treated me like that, but thank you so much for the warning. I'll definitely, watch out for this. And so I use the restroom, we leave, I tell him what happened. Of course, he's like, I told you, gonna be crazy. So in my mind, I'm thinking, my innocent boyfriend, who's in church every time the doors are open, mind you, who's such a wonderful, loving father and is so kind to me, and I'm blind, and he's so helpful and kind to me. So I'm thinking, he's right. This sister-in-law is nuts, okay? So that's what I thought, okay? So, we're dating and everything's going well between he and I, and my relationship with his children. He had 2 younger children with one ex-wife, and then an older child from a prior relationship before her. And so my relationship with the children was going well. My relationship with him was going well. I had started noticing a lot of things about his family that made me uncomfortable. So I was pretty leery of them at this point, but was still friendly with quite a few. Well, friendly with all, but just kind of leery. The first signs of control from him, basically it didn't last long and didn't go well for him at that point. He basically came to me and told me that I had to remove everyone off my Facebook that was of the male gender, who was not my family, and even so wanted me to delete a few of my male family members from my social media account. So what did I do? I postponed the wedding. At that point, I had been through so much as a child, I witnessed so much as a child as far as abuse and control went, so I was not okay with that whatsoever, and I postponed the wedding with plans to move out of his home and look for my own place. We went and spoke with the pastor, and we were able to get through that, and he assured me that everything would fine. Everything seemed to be back to normal. I thought things were well, so I put the wedding back on like a month or 2, I want to say, before it was time to get married. And I'll let you know that I did, during that last bit of time, whenever I put the wedding back on, I had this feeling in my heart that it wasn't a good idea, and for some reason I still went through with it. I really genuinely did love him a lot. I was in love with him. I was, prepared to be his wife through everything, and give him and his children everything that I could to be the best wife and stepmother to them possible. So just keep that in mind. That was genuine on my part. So we did get married, and it was a beautiful Princess Cinderella wedding, custom wedding gown to fit my body, vintage lace, I mean, everything. The beautiful car that matched the wedding that was old, the vintage car that we drove out in, I mean, with a driver and everything. It was perfect. And then 2 weeks later, at my annual appointment for my female appointment, he takes me, which he had never done before, and he takes me to my doctor's appointment, pitches a fit in the doctor's appointment that I will not be seeing a male vagina doctor. So he made me switch doctors 2 weeks into our marriage at that appointment. So embarrassing. I've been using the same doctor since I was about 17 years old, and I have had a lot of problems, several surgeries. I'm not able to have children because at 30 years old, I had to get a hysterectomy. So, it's very important to me to keep my same doctor, and for him to do that, it was traumatizing in more than just the controlling way, but it was traumatizing to have to lose my doctor. And so I've had my hysterectomy since, FYI, and I've gone back to that doctor. But it's just the point. Lunch with my parents. Okay, so not long after that, my parents and I decide to go to lunch one day. And I'm not sure why my pops wasn't working. Maybe it was raining. He does decorative concrete work. But both my parents were available on a weekday, and they offered to go to lunch with me. So we went to a small local little Chinese buffet that I used to work at when I was young, and it was delicious. But while we were there, he calls me, thinking, I'm with my parents. This is okay. Why would I have to ask permission to do that? I was wrong. And he started screaming at me. And even though I didn't have him on speakerphone, my parents could hear everything he was saying. And they were just so appalled, so concerned, and realized how deep I had gotten myself in, I believe, at that point, before I even knew how bad it was. I was scared at that point, but I thought I could still help him change. Friends. I wasn't allowed to really be friends with a lot of my friends anymore. He found different ways to prevent that from happening, to just basically telling me I wasn't allowed to. Some friends, he wouldn't do that to. He would lie and tell me things about them trying to sleep with him and stuff like that. And it was just a disaster. He would do whatever he could do to keep me away from my friends and family at all cost. And to me, the beginning stages of that was, oh, my friend just doesn't want to hang out with me anymore. Or I can't believe my friend would try to sleep with my husband after everything she knows I've been through. Just different little things like this. And really, it was him behind the scenes. So let's see. Cameras. There were cameras in the home, and I figured that out pretty early on in our marriage. I never felt like there were cameras before we got married. Maybe there were. I'm assuming there probably were. But there were definitely cameras, and he became very possessive. He would start talking about things that I would do in the shower, or, while I was folding laundry, or conversations I would be having on the phone with my pastor's wife, or, a friend or a family member. Then I started really seeing those things when he would start saying that kind of stuff. At first I'd be like, oh, what a good guess, but then it comes to, wow, every inch of this house is not safe for me. But I stayed. Oh, my social media. So this is, this happened really quickly as soon as we were married. I think right after the doctor's appointment, I want to say within that same day or the next day, kind of ish, right around there, he made me take everyone off my social media that was not related to me, and even made me take off some of my own family members that he didn't like. Sexual abuse. There was a lot of sexual abuse. He's a very insecure person. So he would make me do things that I wasn't comfortable with because of his own insecurities. He would physically sit there with me and load guns so that I could hear the bullets click in, and he would hold the guns to my head and force me to do sexual things that I was not comfortable with at all. So that was part of it too. The physical and the mental abuse, it ranged, from the worst to, from me just having to cover a few things to me having to wear full-on sweaters and pants in the middle of July. Just a few incidences, for example, walking on our back porch. When you first walked out the door, it was on like wood, like a small little square right by the back door. But then immediately to the left of that was a big chunk of concrete porch. So altogether, the wood and the concrete was maybe about 3.5 feet wide, if that, maybe 3 feet wide, about 8 or so feet long. I'm not exactly sure. But on that was a huge fish tank on the concrete part and a little bench. And so there was like literally barely any room for me to walk. And he would have tools on the ground, on the floor as well, right there. So sometimes I would, trip over that. But anyways, and it's just the point that for me being totally blind, that he didn't care that I had to walk through that, and to go outside, to walk downstairs, to walk across a cement thing into the laundry room, that he didn't care enough to keep that cleaned off for my safety. But on top of that, at the top of the stairs were only 2-3 steps down, not very high. But when you're blind and you're off balance already from all the things, and you're trying to carry laundry baskets, you have no way to protect yourself. And there were several times, where I've been pushed off that porch. At the bottom of the stairs, it's a concrete sidewalk that takes you to the laundry room. And I can't tell you the amount of times that during my marriage, between the concrete falls and other abuse, that I have spent in the hospital with severe concussions. So sometimes he would say that this was so I would know he was talking to me. And when he would be screaming at me, he would sit and poke me really, really hard in my head, specifically on my nerves, where my damaged nerves are from my head trauma. He would poke those really, really, really hard over and over again. Screaming from like, he would be screaming at me so loud that his children's school was a couple blocks away from the home. And I have friends that would be in the drive-through line to pick up their children before or after school, and they would call me, panic, checking on me because they could hear him screaming at me, sometimes even inside of our home. So he was not afraid to get in trouble. He didn't care. He just wanted me to be in fear. Scaring me. Now, I am really fun loving with the blindness thing. I've actually offended people who aren't blind with my own blind jokes. Personally, I have to live with it. It's not anybody else's judgment to say whether I can joke about it or not, in my opinion, because I'm the one that wakes up with it and chooses to make it fun or make it miserable every day. And I choose the fun and the good and the positive. So, but I have friends that will come up and like poke me in the belly button or poke me in the nose and startle me and, joking around. There's a difference between hateful and humorous. And he would be hateful about the way that he would scare me just randomly, and purposely, because he knew that in his home, I was a very timid, very afraid person. And so anytime he jumped out and scared me, hearing his voice unexpected ever terrified me. So when he did that, it mentally messed me up pretty bad for a long time. He would become so violent with me that my screams would be deathly, and it would scare him. I guess that would be the point, that he would be afraid he would get in trouble, and he would start punching himself and screaming for me to stop. And I would get away from him, and I would run out into the front yard and literally sit Indian style, smack down in the middle of our front yard in pouring tears. Sometimes I would be lucky enough to have my phone with me, and I would call. I would usually tell people not to come get me. So I would just call and talk to people, or I would make him feel like I was calling to talk to people, so that he would leave me alone. That eventually didn't work, and he would sit there with that loaded gun, and he would tell me if I picked up that phone that it would either be me or them to die when they got there. So I stopped calling for help for a certain period of time. But I would just sit there in that front yard Indian style, so that all the neighbors would know that I wasn't the one hurting him, but not one person ever tried to help me. Vortex Springs, there is a spring that we can go swimming in that's near us, little ways away from my town, but within traveling distance, day trip type thing. We were there with a bunch of friends and my friends, and he became very violent while he was there. He became intoxicated, and he ended up hitting one of my uncles, physically violent with one of my family members. He chased after me with a tire iron, and I had to hide in his truck while he was beating his own truck, trying to get at me with a tire iron. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. Okay, so the tire iron incident actually was when I left him the first time. That was 6 months into our marriage. It was in July. I left him for 1 week, and I rented my own apartment above someone's home. I went back, didn't even stay gone the full week. I went back. I was scared. I love his children very much. To this day, I love his children very much. And at that point, I didn't want to leave them without me there to help take care of them. And so I went back, and I was afraid that I wouldn't survive without him because I was only living on a disability check at that point. He had prevented a lot of my growth. He is the reason I had quit the job I had before I married him. He manipulated that situation and manipulated me to quit that job. Later, I figured out why. It's just all sorts of things like that. And I lost a large chunk of over half of my income to marry him. So that was part of the reason I went back to him. And I guess I just genuinely was afraid and didn't know if I would ever get any better. I didn't know if I deserved any better at that point. So I went back. Going back was not smart, was not good. Going back was a constant form of abuse. It only worsened. My relationship with family only lessened. My relationship with my friends only lessened. And I was pretty much stuck in a realm of him and his people. And that's exactly what he intended. I finally left him because our very last night was so horrible, and he did it while his children were there. I feel if his children weren't in the home that he may have not let me survive through that night. I feel like if I had not left, I would have died eventually had I not died that night. I felt like at that time, I had a way out, so I ran. I did whatever it took, and I ran. Everything in that man's home when I left was mine. Everything. From the curtain rods on the windows, the curtains, the pots and pans, the dishes, the furniture, the beds his children slept in were brought from my home that I brought into the marriage and came to live in his home. The bed he slept in, everything, dressers, everything was mine. Washer, dryer, refrigerator. I didn't care. At that point, it was my second time leaving him, and I was going to die if I didn't. So I didn't care about any of that stuff. I was also homeless for over 3 months. I jumped around. My sister helped me escape. One of my sisters helped me escape. My cousin came to my sister's house from 2 hours away and picked me up and took me out of town. But I had schooling through the local organization for the blind, and I had a life here that I had to continue. So I had to go back and forth between out of town and my town and jump around different people's couches for 3.5 months, right around 3.5 months. So until I could save up the money to get my own apartment and everything and get on my own feet. But I'll tell you one thing, there was no way ever that I was going back to him. At that point, I was willing to stay homeless if that's what it took, but I wasn't going back to him. While I was running away from him, while I was in my homeless state and bouncing around, he was stalking me. But not only was he had his family and some of his friends stalking me. I would receive text messages from him informing me who I was with, where I came from, where I went to, what color the car was. I mean, tag numbers, everything. He was threatening my life, threatening the lives of the people that I was surrounding myself with. It was very dangerous, very scary, and I had to call the police on him. After I called the police on him, for the most part, it stopped. His girlfriend has harassed me a little since, and he's tried to do things like Voxer me and stuff since, but I was able to block that. My number and everything was changed. So I haven't heard from him, and he's left me alone for quite a long time now. It's been a few years since I've heard from either of them, and it was his girlfriend was the last one. So calling the police really helped get me a little bit safer from that situation. I will go back a little bit though, because before I got to my good healthy point and got my own place and everything, during the midst of me running and hiding, I did find out some things about my marriage. So just going to throw these little tidbits in there only because I'm sure that some of you could probably relate to this. So I kind of now, but I will tell you that it took a long, long time for me to be able to walk around and still feel confident in myself after what he did to me publicly. This was my second marriage where I had to learn to walk with my head held high because of infidelity. And this one was really, really tragic and embarrassing. So he was cheating on me with people from Craigslist. And I found out about that through a high school friend. Now, I've been out of high school for many, 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 many years now, going like close to 20 years. So to hear from someone I went to school with and for her to tell me that a mutual friend of ours informed her that she was sleeping with my husband from Craigslist. I don't know who that person is, but I'm assuming it's somebody I went to school with, so it can only be a certain number of people. Honestly, I never really cared too much who it was, because those nights that he would get up and leave in the middle of the night and be gone most of the night, that was able to give me a little bit of safety. So I felt like I could actually sleep at least a little bit. So I really don't care who it was. More than anything, I'm thankful because it was a little bit of protection for me. But for a long time, it was really embarrassing and I felt very ashamed. He admitted to my family, to my cousin, that I was never loved by him. He saw an easy target with my blindness, with my Christian beliefs, and just with who I am as a person. He thought because of my first marriage not going well, and he knew that I was in marriage therapy for 6 months by myself with my spouse refusing to join me, that I would fight at all for everything, to make my marriage last. So he told her that, and the other family members that were with her, that he felt like I would stay with him no matter what he did and I would never leave him. And he just married me because he wanted someone to take care of his children when it was his week. One of my family members was afraid that I wouldn't believe them, and they told me afterwards that they caught him cheating on me, kissing his oldest son's mother's sister at a convenience store near our house while we were married and together. This particular person I paid on a regular basis to clean my home for me. In saying all of that, I want to bring up my friend who I dedicate this video to one more time, because something that she said to me finally knocked that shame and embarrassment that I was still carrying around with me until recently. I would walk around and pretend it didn't bother me, but it did. But something she said to me helped me to realize that this is not my fault. I am not the one to be ashamed. I am not the one to be embarrassed. She told me that no matter what happened to her, she still walks around our town with her head held high, and she knows that she's not the embarrassment. She's not the shame. He is. So for you, you are not the embarrassment. You are not the shame. Your abuser is. Reach out. Get that help that you need. National Abuse Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. Please protect yourself and get the help that you need. If you're an abuser, there's help for you too. You can make a change. You just have to want to. Please call that number and get the help that you need. If you're a loved one that has someone that is an abuser or has someone who is being abused, that support is there for you as well. 1-800-799-7233. Now, I'll leave you with this poem. It's called Hope. The sun will learn to smile again. The waves will soar and toss. When we have sifted out the mud from hidden pearls and dross, the wind will whisper soothing words to all who hear in peace. The raging storm will clear the deck, and then the clouds will cease. The sand itself will laugh and sing. The trees will up and dance, as joy and peace and love and truth are given lasting chance. And that, my friends, is the end of the Hope poem. And my hope for you is that if you need the help, you will reach out and get the help. And remember that you do not deserve abuse. Any form of abuse, mental, physical, emotional, sexual, you do not deserve abuse. No one does. Please get the help that you need. God bless you all. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to the next episode. Thanks for watching. But before I go, I want to leave you with this. You are special. You are kind. You are smart. You are wonderful. You are worth it. You are important. To reach out to me, please do so by commenting or emailing from trauma to triumph, pcola@gmail.com. God bless you all.